last night, and I mean, one of the craziest endings in the second round you could have possibly gotten. Last night, UFC was at the Apex Center in Las Vegas, Nevada, with the UFC Vegas 25 card. The main event was Yuri Prochazka, a guy who's a former Rising champion, right? Light heavyweight champion Grand Prix, I believe, Tyreece. I believe he had won that. I believe he had won the light heavyweight Grand Prix. UFC noticed him, brought him in. He comes in with the stunning TKO knockout, of Volkan Ozdemir, and he fought last night against Dominic Reyes, coming off of a TKO loss to Jan Blachowicz for the vacant light heavyweight belt. Last night, I mean, fireworks from round 1 to round 2. I think these two guys at 205 are some of the biggest, baddest, fastest, strongest guys you could have in the division, and watching them go back and forth last night was amazing to me. If for those who didn't watch, of course, the winner of the supposed five round main event was Yuri Prochazka by a spinning elbow.
Yes.
In devastating fashion. I mean, comes from like the guy, you know what Yuri Prochazka brings to the table, right? He brings this uniqueness, this mysticism, this unclear of what he's going to throw, what he's going to use at the moment in time. And while stalking Dominic Reyes down in the second round, he gets him against the cage, is trying to tee off, trying to do his thing, then lands this crazy spinning elbow, and Dominic Reyes goes flat. I mean, that's a potential, candidate for knockout of the year.
Yeah, like the way he set it up too. Well, because he had Dominic Reyes hurt. Dominic Reyes, we'll talk about him in a second, but how the finish came about was Yuri was catching him against the cage with elbows as John was trying to cover his nose because his nose was busted and I think it was broken possibly.
Yeah.
And he went with a downward elbow. And then as he went with the downward elbow with the right, he spins with, I believe,
the left elbow.
The left elbow.
Yep.
Yeah. And then that sends Dominic Reyes crashing to the canvas. Actually, his neck kind of went in to, like, the way his head bounced. I thought his head bounced against the canvas. Yeah. But actually he went neck down, his head down into the canvas, which may have compressed his neck. Hopefully not, but it looked really bad on the replay.
He was out. He was fully out. I haven't seen. I haven't seen a knockout like that recently, but that was really. Wow. Wow. I was impressed by that. I looked at, before this fight, we had talked about who we think would win. And I think we obviously both leaned towards Yuri Prochazka, but we also knew we couldn't count on Dominic Reyes, right? Because he's big for 205. He has the reach, he has the length, he has the power. We just, one of the points that you attest to, we just don't know how good he truly is yet. He's beaten some very big candidates in the 205 division, and one of which was a guy who stepped up in Chris Weidman from 185, but we just couldn't tell how good he was going to be just yet. He won a fight against Volkan Ozdemir, which we didn't think he really did win. We thought it was a really, really close fight that should have been edged out for Ozdemir, but Dominic Reyes got the decision. And coming off of the losses to John Jones, with that confidence shattered, and then coming off a loss to Jan Blachowicz for the vacant title, which is also a little bit challenging. We didn't know what was going to happen with Dominic Reyes. And after last night, it was bad. I didn't think we saw anything too bad from Dominic. I think what we really saw was just the overall game of Yuri Prochazka. That guy he's good.
See that? Okay, so let's start with Dominic Reyes since we're here now, right? You said you saw nothing bad from Dominic Reyes, right?
Nothing too terrible. Nothing that was like, nothing. I want to say. Let me retract that. I don't want to say nothing. There's not major holes in his game, in my opinion. There's not crazy major holes like he needs to fix that or he'll never be champion. Or it's not those kind of things. It's like, how do you account? What really happened, in my opinion, last night is like, how do you account for a guy like Yuri Prochazka who just can throw anything and counters everything? It's just a weird fight style to go against. And how do you truly prepare for that? But yeah, go ahead. What were you saying? Oh, sorry.
That's so good. Okay. Let's say this nicely. So Dominic Reyes, right? We'll go look at his win-loss records in a second, but Dominic Reyes. What I actually I have it here, but you can also pull it up as well. So some say, and also pull up Jerry Prochaska's record. That's also good too. His rising stuff too. But with Dominic Reyes, I like the thing with me is I told you yesterday, I didn't know how good Dominic Reyes is. We still don't know. I feel like in the fight he showed promise. Like he went for takedowns. He started off with good body kicks, which I thought he was using his range.
Yep.
It was just, to me, there were tendencies that Dominic Reyes had in the Jan Blachowicz fight.
Yeah.
And tendencies he's had in the Volkan Ozdemir fight. And the tendencies that I've seen in this fight where if Dominic Reyes is on his back foot and against the cage, he loves to do that left hook. As you're coming in, he loves to throw the left hook. That's his go-to, but he relies on that so heavily when he's being pressured. And so like Jerry Prochaska was able to see through that, being the good striker that he is, being loose and everything like that. He's able to evade those strikes and see it coming. So where maybe the first round he caught him with it, and then after that, it seems like Jerry Prochaska just got his timing down. Every time that he would try to throw something on his back foot, it would either miss or Jerry Prochaska would just get out of the way to not get caught.
With this this much of space, like he was able to. So I keep going.
No, yeah. So like the one thing I'm seeing from Dominic Reyes is like, okay, if he's on his back foot and he's going against the cage, what he likes to do is he likes to move to his left.
Yeah,
he likes to move to his left to where either coming in, he's gonna catch you with the right hook or the left hook. Usually, he'll go with the left hook. And somebody like Jerry Prochaska, somebody like a John Jones, now Jan Blachowicz and some other fighters that you like to move forward, like to pressure, but also know to not rush in like a Chris Weidman. They can see that shit coming.
They can, and that's one of the things I can say. Yeah, that's one of the holes in his game. But he ate a lot of those shots better than I thought he was. I'm back, fellas. Driving to listen. Hey, Flathead Politics. Happy to hear.
Good morning.
Happy to hear you're back. Feel free to listen. I'm glad you're here. Just whenever you can, add your expertise in, as we would say.
Most definitely.
But yeah, going back to what you attest to, I think you're right. I think one of the bigger things is that Dominic Reyes most fighters don't do well on their back foot, right? Like that's a hard thing to do, is to fight going backwards. There's not too many fighters who can do that. I think when Dominic Reyes, one of the things that showed me was that he was also able to handle a lot of the shots that Yuri threw round one. Now round two, it seemed like the accumulation or what was going on in round one, like kind of got to Dominic in a way. No? It seemed like his face was definitely worn. You could see it. His left eye, left side of his face was swollen, a little red. I think that's one of the more interesting things. But this is really just I feel like there's not too many guys who can do that to Dominic Reyes in this division.
At 205, I don't know.
At 205, we don't know. But there's three people I want to say besides John Jones who can probably edge him out like this, or potentially finish him. One of which is obviously Jan Blachowicz. We also said that we didn't know if he gets caught, because Jan likes to throw a lot of combinations, right? Yuri was one of the guys when we saw this fight was made, we was like, ooh, that's an interesting that's an interesting matchup, because Yuri could definitely hurt him. And then the last one is Alexander Rakic, right? Who's got the power and the timing and the striking expertise to deal with that. Those are my only three guys right now that I can believe that can do this to. Oh, fourth?
I would have fourth. Megomed Ankalaev.
Ankalaev. Yeah. Actually, yeah, you're right. That's a strong dude. He the Nikita Krylov fight. He's pretty good in that fight. I was pretty impressed. But yeah, those are like the only four guys I'll give you right now that can do that. And I think one of the bigger things, I don't see it. One of the other things is that this 205 division now, these MFs are nasty.
Yes,
we're not getting 185ers who don't want to cut weight anymore. We're getting natural 205ers.
Right.
And that's why it's getting so much harder in terms of talent and competition, which is great for Jan. But you got guys like Yuri who have insane reach, right? Yuri's is 80 inches plus, right? I think. And then the next thing you know is that he has the fluidity of a guy who entered the Matrix.
Yuri is 80 exactly.
80. Come on, that's long. I don't know. But yeah, going back to Dominic Reyes, I mean, that's one. You're right. That's one of the bigger things that holds in his game is that he had these little tendencies that were made available and that were shown to be chinks in his armor in the Jan Blachowicz fight, and I think Yuri capitalized very well.
Yeah. Again, the way Dominic Reyes, if he's like, there's ways to where instead of going fully to back against the cage, you could try to exit out.
Yeah,
and it seems like he'll fall into the trap where kind of like what Tyron Woodley kind of does to a lesser degree, because Tyron really doesn't really circle. He just stays at one spot. But Dominic Reyes will circle to his left a lot, and he'll try to escape out of that. He tries to look for the hook coming in. If you're somebody that can kickbox or can look at that, you can stay on the outside, kick him, throw kicks, throw kicks to the body. If you're Jiri Prochazka, you'll just say fuck it and just go head in and try to land on Dominic Reyes. Which again, if you're back against the cage, you don't really have a lot of work room to.
You don't have a wiggle room.
Exactly.
I will say this: the one thing that I thought that that was shown from Dominic's part was he did have good defense up until a certain point, right? Like then he just started getting tagged, and it was like, all right, this is the point of no return. But Yuri Prochazka actually had really good defense, and I was really surprised he had a ground game. Not that I was really surprised, but he actually was really good on the ground.
Yeah.
I was impressed by that. I was really impressed. Sorry, maybe we're lagging here, so maybe that's why it's coming through like that way. But Yuri Prochazka, he like shoots like for this weird takedown and almost gets it, and it doesn't, but then gets the take. I was like, wow, like that's not something I thought this fight would ever get to, is a takedown.
I did on Dominic Reyes' part. I thought Dominic Reyes would switch it up, which he did in the first round. Which again, give him credit. Goes for a body lock and then was able to transition to the half guard.
Yeah,
but Jiri Prochazka didn't stay down for long, and even Dominic Reyes went for a guillotine.
He did. He dropped for a guillotine. He pops out. He also had a really good guard, right? He was throwing elbows from the bottom. Brought the head in, make sure he did very tactful things. I just think Yuri he's such a strange fighter.
Yes, and
he's such a strange fighter.
And I again, it goes back to the question of I don't know. There's maybe a good thing and a bad thing, to where. Like we both think that Dominic Reyes is good.
Oh, for sure. Top 10 without a doubt.
We talk about what things we see in this fight and stuff like that, like him going his back against the cage and how he tries to exit out or how he'll rely on just staying to the back of the cage and try to go with a left hook or right hook as a person coming in, which is caught with Chris Weidman and people in the past. But that said, even when we talk about his bad tendencies he may have, he's still a very, very good fighter, and he deserves to be in that top 5. The question goes against these other 205ers like a Jan Blachowicz, like a Alexander Rasik, like a now a Jiri Prochazka, potentially Magomed Ankalaev,
yeah.
Like, how good is Dominic Reyes? We've seen promise out of him, but we haven't really seen if he is that elite level fighter. We've seen him against John Jones. He almost beat John Jones. Some people had him. Some people had him beating John Jones.
It was a close fight. Let's just call it what it was. A spade. It was a very close fight.
Right.
It is what it is. I'm sorry. I just want to say that. A lot of people say, "Oh, it was one-sided." No, it was a very close fight, but he proved I can understand that. I can understand the argument for people saying he should have won.
Right. So it's looking at his he's on a 3-fight losing streak. He lost to Jiri Prochazka by knockout. He lost to Jan Blachowicz by knockout. Again, the John Jones thing. Some people having it for Dominic Reyes. I have for John Jones personally. Yeah. I thought he won round, I believe 3, 4, 5.
5. Yeah, he won the last 3.
That's what I had him. But some people have it for Dominic Reyes. Besides that, his wins are Chris Weidman, we've seen in the last couple of years, not just his last fight, which unfortunately he had his leg broken, but in his last couple of years, Chris Weidman has never really been the same since he lost to Luke Rockhold. Volkan Ozdemir, we had Volkan Ozdemir winning that fight. He's beaten Ovince St. Preux, where Ovince St. Preux, he's been the guy that's always a ranked fighter, but has never really crossed that top 5 spot yet in the UFC. Jared Cannonier is a middleweight. Back with Jared Cannonier, like he was trying to figure himself out.
Yeah.
And then Jeremy Kimball, Joaquin Christensen, which we don't really hear from in the UFC,
or I think they're fighting anymore.
No, so again, look at his win-loss record in the UFC against the names he's beaten. Volkan Ozdemir is questionable. Chris Weidman maybe towards the end of his career. Ovesay Prue, somebody that's still trying to crack into the top 5.
Yeah,
it's against John Jones, Jan Blachowicz, Jiri Prochazka. Those are top 5, top 10 guys.
Yeah,
he hasn't really showed out.
This is almost in comparison, or like this kind of mirrors the way you would think a guy like Paulo. We talked about this when Paulo Costa and Israel Adesanya fought right recently.
Yes.
We talked about this, how Israel fought a lot of the lower good top guys before he got to that top 5 spot to challenge. Right. Then he fights guys like Robert Whitaker, Yoel Romero, Kevin Gastelum. But when you have guys like Costa devastating, he's great. There's no issue there, right? But Costa's rise to the top is nowhere near as I don't want to say nowhere near as challenging, but it's not, the resume isn't as long as Israel Adesanya. And so like when he gets to the top, when you look at it, you're like, damn, he beat these good people. Israel beat better people. Let's see who wins. Israel's resume is better, and Israel finishes him in the second or third round? Second round. Yeah. Second. So it's just it comes to one of those things, right? Like Dominic Reyes I will say this, he got pushed I don't think he got pushed too soon. I think at that time, he was the best guy in that division. At that time.
I agree.
There was no one who could challenge John Jones, right? John Jones had just finished beating Thiago Santos. He also just beat Anthony Lionheart Smith, right? Who else was there? You had Corey Anderson engaged with Jan Blachowicz at the time. So Dominic Reyes beats all these guys, beat a guy like Chris Weidman, who's a former champion. That's obviously to get you out there. Then you fight John Jones. I think I don't want to say he's reached his pinnacle in terms of UFC, but it's gonna be hard for him to get back. But it's still possible at the end of the day for him to be top. So I'm not counting him out. But where he goes from here, and this is a perfect segue for that, for at least him, and then we'll go Yuri.
Right.
Dominic Reyes, there's got I don't want to say there has to be a lot that needs to change. But now we need to take some good time and really debate how do we stay top 5? We need to be a little bit smarter, maybe who the next return fight is.
Right.
And so he has the confidence back there slightly, because he was definitely still pushing on Yuri, even though he was hurt. That was one of the more impressive parts, right? He stood his ground, which I was impressed by. But I want some time off and to really reevaluate what's going on. Not too much time, but enough time. Who knows, right? But for potential matchups for him, who would you suggest? For Dominic Reyes, sorry.
Honestly,
I can pull up the rankings as well.
Yeah, you can pull up the rankings. Honestly, right now, I would want Dominic Reyes to take some time off. Dominic Reyes, just going back to this real quick. Dominic Reyes, we both agree he's a very good fighter. Very good fighter. I think the timing of him being pushed to the John Jones fight and then now being thrust into the top 5 spot, I think maybe even number 3.
Yeah. He's number 3.
Because there was nobody really around at that time, Dominic Reyes hasn't gotten the, he has the experience against top 10 level guys in the UFC at the lightweight heavyweight division. Yeah. So now, he's kind of in that weird spot where, where can he go from here?
He's losing to the top 5 guys.
Right. So he's in the middle of the division. He's at the maybe top 5. He'll probably drop to maybe number 6. But for him, it's like, okay, how did the UFC handle him going forward? Which translates to where he goes from here. I would think he'd take some time off, and then we probably won't see him till, if not the end of the year, maybe early next year.
Early January.
Because of the. Sorry, I know you.
No. We're lagging, but you're hitting it on the spot. We're flowing right now, Tyreece. Even though there's lag, we're flowing.
Yeah. So with Dominic Reyes, again, one of the things I've noticed from the Jan Blachowicz fight and the Jiri Prochazka fight is the fact of the damage he's taken. Mm-hmm. And yes, he returns fire, and yes, he's able to land against these other opponents, even though he's hurt and he has heart, he has will. At the same time, though, he's accruing a lot of damage, of damage. And especially to the nose, where again, if it's broken again, he broke his nose against Jan Blachowicz fights. I would assume his nose is not in great shape with this fight as well, because we've seen him leaking, and I think it was a little crooked in between rounds. That's going to be a problem going forward, and I think maybe take some time off for the rest of the year if he can. And the UFC, he has to come with a good matchup with him to try to get him back to that spot. Maybe you fight somebody outside the top 10. Maybe you fight somebody in the top 15.
You know who I like as a good matchup for him?
Who?
A guy. This is well, it's just I'm hearing out. There's three guys I kind of really do like for him, right? Paul Craig,
okay,
Misha Serkinov, or Ryan Spann. Three big 205ers. Those are all possible guys to really get your name back on it and say, I deserve to be top 10, then move up back up the hill.
You mean if he fights this year?
If he fights this year, yeah.
Okay. I'll go with that too. If we're saying he fights this year, which again I advocate, if he cannot fight this year, don't, just so we could kind of like match make the right fights for him to move forward and also give him time to recover and make sure he's not too injured. He's taking a lot of damage for 205er. I think he's only maybe was he like 20?
He's young. He's under 30.
Yeah, I think he's under 32. So I don't want like as you're.
Oh, he's 30. He's 31. Sorry,
he's 31. Okay, so that's still young for this. That's still young for this division.
Yeah.
Again, maybe send him out this year. If not, maybe a Ryan Spann or a Johnny Walker or winner of Jamal Hill, Paul Craig fights Dominic Reyes next. Again, I don't want to put him up against somebody that. I don't want to give him easy fights, but give him favorable fights to where it's an even playing field for him, especially coming off 3 back-to-back losses.
Yeah, big losses, right? The confidence one is from John Jones, right? Now you're thinking the greatest of all time beat me. I have to change to be better. You change a lot of things. You lose to the current champ. Now you lose to a guy who arguably is one of the best light heavyweights in the world. But you've obviously been in UFC longer. You had a little bit longer, and me and I have as much experience as him. But it's a lot. That's mental and it's a lot physically. So
it was both 2 bad back-to-back knockouts too.
Yeah, too bad. This one was worse, but definitely 2 bad knockouts. And for Yuri Prochazka, I just do want to read you some of the people on his list. In terms of people he's beaten. Obviously, Volkan Ozdemir was his first fight in UFC. He beat him by knockout. But he's beaten CB Dalloway, who was on a tear and rising. He's beaten Fabio Maldonado, who was a heavyweight, then dropped down to light heavyweight, was really good with boxing in terms of UFC, and then he got released. But Muhammad Lawal, he beat some good outside stars. Brandon Halsey, I think that was the former middleweight champion of Bellator at one point. So he's beaten some good guys, but this guy, he's an issue. He's a very big issue for a lot of people. And who would you have? What would you say is next for Yuri?
And just to add to what you're saying, so his last loss was to King Muhammad Law. And he avenged that loss by, I think, knocking him out.
Yep.
And after this Dominic Reyes fight, it's his last out of his last 12 fights, 12 wins, 11 of those were by knockout.
Yeah.
So he has knocked out 11 opponents in his last 12 fights. That is a good ratio. But
he's a finisher.
He's a finisher, and he's going to get people to want to watch him, and especially after his antics and how he acted in this fight. He was flowing out there, his crazy hair like a Teletubby. Like he looked good. He looked good. So the question is, what goes for him next? Obviously, we have Glover Teixeira and John Blachowicz tied up. I would think he's the next one in line. My question to you would be, do you like his chances against John Blachowicz or Glover Teixeira?
I like his chances against Glover Teixeira before I like his chances against Jan. And the reason why is because I think with what I saw with his jiu-jitsu and kind of his ground game, I think he might be strong enough to kind of get past that part. And he could hurt Teixeira in my opinion, because Teixeira's just got the years of wear and tear. But the jiu-jitsu of Teixeira is immaculate, right? Like we know this guy, if he gets you down, he's keeping you there. I think if he's able to do that early with a guy like Prochazka, if Teixeira's able to do that early with a guy like Prochazka, it's better for him. But Prochazka is so weird and unorthodox, and he has the reach that the counters will definitely prove worse for Glover than it would for Jan, right? But then with Jan, the biggest issue with Jan is Jan throws combinations. Jan throws combinations, and he doesn't. It's not like he's loading up, but he has the power to put you down. So with a guy who is not And let's make this fact. Yuri did take a lot of hits in this fight with
Yes,
Dominic Reyes,
I was gonna
and
bring that up.
he also was stumbled a few times, right?
Right.
The way he fights kind of caters with his hands low. So his main way of evading is either leaning back or slipping, right? If you can't slip and you can't evade, and with a guy like Jan who can be precise, that's going to end bad for you. There's only so many times you can slip and evade before he catches you, right? There's a finite amount. So if we're talking Prochazka, I would like him to fight for the belt next, maybe, or one more fight wouldn't hurt. I would like to see how he goes against Alexander Rakic. That would be a really good fight, in my opinion. But I don't know if UFC makes that. But in terms of just to bring this back, you did say how do you think he does against both of those guys, right? That was what you're getting. I think the better luck would be against Glover because of his Prochazka's countering ability. That's the only reason why. When it comes to Jan counters as well.
Yes,
we've shown that Jan not only counters, but Jan grapples. So I don't know. I think Jan he has a hard time with Jan than he does with Glover, but it's MMA, right? And Glover took a crazy punishment from Anthony Lionheart Smith and then comes back and submits him.
Yeah, so with Jiri Prochazka, like again, we both I've been saying since he came to the UFC, or before he came to the UFC, I said, watch out for this guy, it's gonna be a problem.
That was your prediction, guy. Yep.
Before the Ultimate fight, I've heard about him enough and watched enough of his fights before he got to the UFC, to which this guy in the light heavyweight division that kind of needs new blood. He's somebody that's gonna rise to the occasion and probably get into the top 5 really soon. And here we are. That being said, his style is not the greatest in terms of fighting against light heavyweights. Now he had success against Dominic Reyes, yes. But against guys like a John Blachowicz, against guys, I would say Glover Teixeira, because Glover Teixeira, even though he's older, his defense is still pretty fucking solid. So for Jiri Prochazka, who likes to run, who has to come in with these shots and likes to act loopy, and he has his hands down for the most part, those shots are going to be hard to cover up and try to defend, especially if all you're doing is sliding back or trying to evade. Because the body kicks were there. Like Dominic Reyes stopped the body kicks, and part of that is because he went to the leg kicks, and then it started to get countered with the right, with the cross or the straight down the middle, which hurt him a couple of times. But those body kicks were there. Like I see things in Jiri Prochazka's game where it's like he may not be in for a long time in this division when he keeps fighting like that.
Yeah.
I think there's a stat on UFC stats that say,
I'm sorry.
Per minute, he absorbs 6.80 shots. Significant strikes.
God, I broke it. Sorry, I almost broke my headphones there.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Repeat that. I'm sorry.
No, I said per minute, he absorbed 6 shots. 6
a lot.
Strikes.
Now, with a guy like Glover has been known to put people out in less time, right? A guy like Jan has the resume of knocking people out. So don't get me wrong. Prochazka has the reach. He has the height. He's durable. He is strong. But one thing we've seen in UFC is that you can't take hits forever. No one can take hits forever. And the people who do, they're superhuman, but at a certain point, they crumble, right?
Yes.
So realistically, again, I'm still going to stick with my original prediction. He can get the next fight. That's fine. The winner. It is what it is. Definitely keeps the division moving, for sure. Especially for Jan if he's running through opponents, and then it would be if Glover wins, it's a picture perfect way to do that. But the thing about it is that upper echelon of guys like that when you make mistakes like that, they will make you pay. So I would like to see Yuri kind of change that moving forward. Not change it too much because obviously it works for him, but I want to see a little bit more from him, a little bit more in terms of defense.